Within Secrets of Earth, the son of both of Myose's, Tulip and Noah, plays a fairly minor role in his first appearances in the story. He acts as a support for his sister Joy in the beginning, but as I got to the end of my Legacy series and had more time to develop him, he becomes a far more complex character with far more complex relationships around him. This video is much less of a redesign because of how recent his design is, and more of a character growth in retrospect. This technically will be broken into 2 parts for fun reasons, and we'll get to it later. But that's for then. But for right now, a lot of the growth comes from being able to see a character go from just a t-shirt and some detailless shorts to somebody overcoming their traumas and becoming a more complete person. It's a fun, also, other growth moment for me. To begin with, I want to cover Kovu's design conceptually rather than his actual design. His name clearly derives from the delightful Lion King sequel's main character, Kovu, which I found out later, far more later than I realistically should have, is Scar in Swahili. That should have been more obvious to me even as I became an adult, but I never got around to looking it up until far too late. And now I'm in too deep to change it, so the consequences be damned. We're here, and we're even here with the cringy misspelling of it for the funsies because I was a fun little child. So we have the KOVO spelling rather than the KOVU spelling, which is supposed to be correct because it is an actual word derived from an actual language. But like I said, consequences be damned. We're in it too deep. He is an elemental character, but his ideas are more to expand upon other aspects of the world rather than just how the elements interact in the human side of the realm, because we have multiple realms. The other side is known as the Veil, where the magical creatures live. And if you're interested in learning more about that, please let me know in the comments, and we'll do like a background design study and some fun narration about the different parts of the Veil as that goes through. So please let me know if you're interested. But now on to his story. Kovu is the older of the twin siblings, awakening 3 years before his sister and the subsequent start of Book 2. This is likely the only time in the entirety of the series that we get to see a second generation element, quote unquote, more seen as a child. Like legitimately, there are no other children in this series. Kovu appears more like a 7-ish-year-old, and his sister, once she finally awakens, appears to be around 5 or 6. Kovu, being the only son during those 3 years, would have been learning how to use his ability and even shapeshifting into the coyote form that he inherited from his father. And then once Joy wakes, they get to spend that time training together. They like playing kickball, and their dad is great. Go watch the video about his dad. He's great. He's a good boy. Anyway, once we get to the main conflict of the story, however, we learn that during these developmental years the kids are going through, the twins are in fact still physically and spiritually connected to Tulip. Meaning that when Tulip has the internal turmoil with Nightmare once again, the kids are affected and their physical forms get disrupted. Which affects Kovu first because he's the oldest. Which ends up almost wiping the poor kid out of existence. But luckily, oh so luckily, the situation was handled and he only ends up in the spirit realm of all places with the damned and the dead. This is the first major arc for his character. I'll cover how Joy handles the situation in her part of the design contributions. But for now, Kovu is trapped in the spirit realm and waiting to be saved by his sister, and develops immense anxiety from this because a lot of his development is around dependency. But he was more or less taught by Noah to be a strong foundation, Even if he is not the strongest, because it became clear quickly that his sister was in fact stronger than him, he was coached by his father to be, if you can't be the strongest, be emotionally strong for them. So that way they had someone to cry to when they need it, someone to fall back on. Important to be a good support network for those in your life. But being trapped in the spirit realm, you can't really do that now, can you? So this anxiety persists. And there's some underlying senses of failure going through Kovu before he even realizes that these are the feelings that he feels. Furthermore, his time in the spirit realm isn't one of just sitting around, neither. No. He does, in fact, meet this keeper of said spirit realm and is met with the dread that comes from being alone with a dead spirit. I never really come up with much for how these interactions go during this time, but I can imagine it's still traumatizing for a child of the same and is a defining moment that resonates throughout his adulthood. But then finally, Joy goes through her story and sets him free. But he is met with yet another obstacle. In his attempt to leave, he is a child of Tulip and Pearl, and given the status quo, he also has this like nightmare form of himself, who is never named until the end of the series. And this version of himself literally prevents him from leaving the spirit realm unless he agrees to take him with. Unless Kovu agrees to take him with. But poor Kovu doesn't know that this is technically a bluff offer, because he was already going to come with anyway. Because nobody told Kovu that this side of their lineage exists. Tulip is very selfish in that way. But we'll cover more about who I now refer to as Bonnie in the next episode of Character Redesigns, because I do have some thoughts about this boy, but I want him to be his own separate video because it's actually integral to his character to be a separate identity. And so he is let through. But it's not without its own consequences that once he agrees. This choice to let him through has led to the consequences of having his body taken over, thus removing more choices from his life. Man has like no control. I have a Kibby trying to bother me. Hello, Kibby. Hello. Aww. Anyway, hold on, baby. So the choice of this conflict, taking away his sense of choice, has come back for like some fun breakdowns. I am distracted by the Kibby. Let's try this again. But because this nightmare version of himself took control of his body, Kovu continues to have no sense of control in his own life. He barely even has a chance to age within his own body naturally, since once they return from the spirit realm, it shifts from his body that he's used to one that's older, to match the time that elapsed since he was in the living realm. After the fun ordeal that'll occur between Joy and this nightmare version of Kovu, the poor boy does not regain control over himself. It actually, he does regain control over himself. But the story kind of ends there for now. From then on, he'll be able to learn more about his dragon, formalities, since at some point in this story, he learns he's the Dragon Lord, or at least the heir to be the Dragon Lord. But none of that is really explained. I never got into it. So at some point he starts down that road once he learns about it. I don't know when, don't know where, don't know how, but he learns about it. And then the story just leaves the two alone after we get to this point. And we explore the other elements within their generation. So that's how that book ends. It's pretty abrupt. Never was good at writing endings. But the art! Let's talk about the art! So my good boy gets a nice glow up of a lifetime while he's on his growing up arc. He does go from just being a guy with like long dark brunette hair, a black t-shirt and cargo shorts, to now a real stand-up outfit. But let's be real. I do like the black t-shirt and cargo shorts for his character. Is a great starting base because the bro kind of lacked a lot of self-defining character and idles around for a lot of the background time he's in my story. He just kind of goes in and out of the one side of the veil to the other, figuring out how to be a dragon lord and figuring out what it means to be a person. And until we get to the current the ending story pieces, where he's forced to confront the reality of himself, his actions, and his perceptions of reality. And from this, he is forced to learn how to be a better ruler to his own kind, but also to develop a backbone and a sense of self-worth without having to feel like a complete person in the same way that he perceives his sister Joy to be, with how her and her own nightmare version of herself seem to be in a much better balance than him and his nightmare version is. So that confrontation also forces him to come to a nice character development. But this slow character development is paired nicely with a fabulous outfit change. He gets a really cute pink button-up shirt that he likes to keep open and pop up the collar. I like the pink colors. I don't have necessarily a strong explanation. There we go. For like why I went with pink. It just complements his blue scales really nicely when he's in his like half dragon form that you'll see for like the rest of the duration of his entirety of existence. I think it's a fun older brother look, and it suits his kind of silly attitude he'll have from time to time, especially when he interacts with others. He does keep the cargo shorts, I will not lie, but it's mostly to keep those nice long dragon legs exposed because you gotta see the half form that he likes to stay in. And he just keeps his legs, the tail, and his horns as his status symbol. Sometimes you'll get to see his wings, but they're not as prevalent because they're not practical to like have out all the time. And if you want to know more about the dragons and the dragon cultures that exist in Secrets of Earth, please let me know. And I will lore dump about the speculative evolution that I hyperfixated on for like 2 weeks when I came up with that on the magical side of the veil. Let me know if you're interested in some more of the hyperfixation about speculative evolution when it comes to dragons. Please do. So Kovu's character, unlike Noah, follows a young man having to learn how to become a person, pretty much, when his story is about the control being taken away from him and having to rebuild his own sense of identity when most of his sense of self was built on somebody worth being depended on. Despite being a physically strong individual, he still has a lot of mental and emotional work to do by the end of the story. He decides to finally let go of some parts of himself in order to become that said better person. Not only to his subordinates within his own species, but to the people who actually need him, like his sister. And the stress of their bonds continually be pushed for this. So thank you so much for watching. This has been a fun video, and I'm very excited for the next one. So I hope to see you again on the Crossroads as we do some more character breakdowns and character designs. So I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.